Town Council Budget Workshop of February 6, 2020 to order with a moment of silent meditation salute to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, here we go. It's going to be a journey out, that's for sure. I wanted to start out the first session with having Brian explain where we are at this point in time, because a lot has happened. On page 4, with the tax levy calculations, Brian will go through, what the current tax rate is, where we're going to go with the new tax rate based on the revenue, how much we're over the 4% cap, and all that good stuff. So Brian, without further ado, try and give us
The quick and
well, actually,
summary,
yeah,
high
just
level.
that as well, but the drill it down as best you can.
Sure,
So
Sure.
that we can follow, where things are going and where they were. and all
sure,
that.
okay. So, as you guys are aware, we had a reval. So this upcoming fiscal year, we're gonna see a large increase in net assessed values. We're looking at residential, real property is up about 18%. So that's gonna provide additional revenue for us. However, we have a 4% cap. So with that being said, we have to decrease the mill rate to about 1883 in order to cover our budget, right? And that's still in, and just to take a step back, these rates are very preliminary. Vision's still working on giving us their data from the reval. So right now, we're really just working off their best estimate for real property. We're gonna get good numbers from them or solid numbers in mid-February, so in the next week or two. We kind of lean on them to get them as soon as possible, but we're not the only people leaning on them. So we'll get them hopefully in a week or so. So with that being said, these numbers, as you can see, the exemptions, the tangible taxes, and the motor vehicle, they're consistent with last year's numbers. The only thing I did adjust was the motor vehicle tax because of the phase out. So we know that revenue, the decrease in revenue we're seeing here is going to show up in general government as revenue because that's the way the state is working it. They're increasing the exemptions, which reduces the amount of revenue we're going to take in tax dollars, excuse me, but they're supplementing us with aid right now with state funding. So it shows up under general government. So it's a wash at this point until we find out what they're going to do down the road. So there's no financial impact to that, even though there's a slight decrease in motor vehicle revenue. At this point, we're being compensated by the state for our loss in municipal motor vehicle revenue. So with that being said, we've seen a large increase in real property. That's the one number that we did get from Vision, which is going to drive the mill rate down, right? So now we're at 1883 to cover our municipal budget. That still puts us about 500,000 over the 4% cap. So we have to somehow, and we're hoping the school is going to make up that difference. And we'll have to wait to see what turns out when we see their numbers. But we're still over the 4% cap. We're at 6.75. And I was explaining earlier to a couple people that although these net assessed values are solidified and we could see them go up, specifically the tangible, it's going to not give us any relief because the 4% cap is based off the tax levy. So we can't increase the tax levy by more than 4%. So if the net assessed values go up, yes, they're going to provide more revenue, but it's going to put us farther over the cap. So we have to decrease that mill rate to get us back to the same tax revenue that we're projecting now, if that makes sense.
I have to say, I'm a little confused on something here.
Okay.
Our tax rate currently is $20.68.
Correct.
So
someone's gonna look at this and say, oh, what do you mean? Now we're going down to $18.83 for a tax rate. So therefore, tax rate's going down by a couple of bucks. And we're making out. Doesn't matter what Cheryl or anybody else does. Tell me when I'm wrong.
You're wrong because so you take an example of a $300,000 home.
Mhm.
If you take the 18% increase in property values,
That's now 351.
it's about $351,000 home.
Right.
So if you apply that same tax rate, you'd see an enormous hike in taxes. Even decreasing that mill rate down to 1883, we're still seeing a decrease in the mill rate of $1.85. However, with an increase of 17% to that property value, they're still going to see a $405 increase for the year.
More.
You say 1.5?
$405
More per year.
more per year.
$300,000.
Correct.
Is that $350,000 house or 300,000?
300 at 17% adds another 51,000, so 351.
So that's when
So the $300,000 house would pay an additional
$405
$405.
per year.
Yeah.
Correct.
Even though the mill rate's low.
Even though it looks
Right,
like.
because their property
It appears
values-
that, oh boy,
Because the
this is
value's
great.
higher.
And that's the only thing that really counts to the people, it's how much they pay.
Sure.
All that other,
Yes.
Mhm.
and,
And that increase in the levy, that 1.223 million, that's pretty much the school, right, Brian?
Yeah, so the increase in the school is 1.2 million right now.
Right.
And our increase in tax levy is currently 1.2 as well.
And here we begin.
Yeah, and we'll get into the details, obviously, as we go through and what makes up that increase. But on a high level, you got to keep in mind going forward that because our budget got rejected last year, we had to, the alternate budget was really FY19 budget. So our municipal budget that we're comparing this year to is really 2 years ago. And we've had a lot of contractual obligations, whether it's debt services,
Land trust.
union payroll obligations, pension, healthcare, all these things go up annually. And because our budget was rejected last year, we're seeing 2 years worth of increases in the current year to the municipal budget.
And even if, let's suppose next week it gets knocked down to 4%, Cheryl does what we hope they'll do, and gets down to 4%, our budget is gonna fail again. So when our budget fails again,
I hope it
we're gonna go back, we're gonna be using a budget from 3 years ago, and it will be devastation.
Yeah, because we, our contractual obligations, we have to pay,
Right,
we
Regardless.
have to pay.
Why do you think the budget's going to?
because people are not gonna vote for a budget that has a 4% increase. That's just the way it is.
Well, it's better than a 6.75.
Well, of course, but I mean,
I think
I think we need, that obviously,
We have to
we
sell
need to
that.
keep that as a possibility.
And we have to really work at having them understand that, we've already done that.
And we need to
work.
let them know that if we do this, we're going back 3 budgets.
And it's also, 14 years ago when we came on council, we went up, it was the year before, it was an 18% increase in 1 year
Mhm.
because of acts like this.
the bottom line is, this council, and I've talked to the council president privately, and I'm not gonna say what we discussed, but there needs to be a political response to this. The bottom line is, and I've stated this at meetings about the Terre Haute budget, it has to be defeated, and we need substantial support in Richmond and Hopkinton. And the budget vote is in the beginning of April, so that's when we have to really knock that off. We just can't rhetorically, say the same thing over and over again. The thing that really counts is defeating the Terre Haute budget. And then we have some at least negotiable points with the school committee. And then they still get, 2 more bites at the apple, as you pointed out, Lisa, so, because we have 2 things to sell. Personal taxes for the residents of this town, and also its impact on town government. And those are the things. That's crucial. That's nothing to do with politics. It's about the actual operation of this town to do the government business, as well as the impact on taxpayers. So, you know, it's nice to make suggestions about cutting the budget, the school budget, but if you don't hit them with the side of the head, figuratively speaking, it's probably not going to sink in. And that's not your responsibility as finance director, but the council really has to start thinking about getting something going on with Richmond to make sure that this thing is defeated in April.
Okay.
And my only general question is, based on the Town of Hopkinton solar project list revenue spreadsheet that was done as of November 12, 2019, when we get to specific line items in the budget, can you tell me where this solar revenue is going to be?
Right, so it's a
That's all I
combination.
really.
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk to that. There's definitely revenue.
I saw one place, but.
Yeah, that's really where it's gonna show up. It's gonna show up, the permit fees are gonna show up in building and zoning, and an increase in taxes would show up in the values that we're gonna see when Vision gives us our update. Now again, that increase in net assessed values due to the tangible, our hands, are tied because of that cap. So we can't really utilize, if say tangible taxes went up substantially, at this point, we can't get more revenue off it in the current fiscal year because the 4% cap the Auditor General applies is on the tax levy. So it's not going to benefit us in the current year because we can't increase. If it provided more revenue in the current year, we're going to just exceed our cap even more, which we can't. So we'd have to decrease our mill rate so that we can only have our 4% cap. That's the only amount we can have.
It's a vicious circle.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's
What's
a
been
good.
sold is,
Well,
Yeah.
no, it's revenue, it's revenue.
I mean,
yeah,
it's-
but it's,
Even so.
it's still part of it's gonna be part of
If,
a calculation, a formula, which means you can't really read the
Well,
total.
I think what's clouding our judgment on this, because obviously it defies logic, we think of extra revenue, think it's good, right? But I think the school bill, right? I mean, if the school bill wasn't $1.2 million higher for us, we'd have some revenue. I mean, we wouldn't be at 4%. We'd be able to do something, right? Spend it in CIP or do something. There's some obvious benefits to having more revenue, but because the school bill is capped us so much, our hands are tied. And as Brian said, the Auditor General bases everything on revenue, so.
And there's no solar revenue as high as 1.2 million.
No.
Because it's this year, a little bit next year, and it's spread out. Anyway,
Yeah, and to be clear, we are getting additional revenue in tangible taxes, right? Because we're adding to our tax base, right? However, we have to decrease the residents' taxes by whatever that increase is because we can only have so much revenue coming in before we exceed our 4% cap. So it's just coming from a different source, right? So the mill rate's going to be decreased based on whatever the tangible base increase is. That's more revenue we're going to get from tangible. We're going to have to decrease the mill rate, which would essentially benefit the.
Benefit the taxpayer.
It will benefit the
Because that
taxpayer.
decreases their tax burden.
Correct.
And that is a help
Correct.
by itself.
Right.
So that is not a bad
Because
thing.
we need X amount to of revenue,
On the go.
right, to support our budget and our operations.
Correct,
And the more of it that comes from tangible, the less is going to come from residential.
correct.
So, and same with motor vehicle, that's another.
Yep.
Paragraph.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Let's start in with the folks from Public Works, page 33 in our books. First page is the salaries, and really watch the foreman and director there. It's getting to a dangerous level.
I think that should go substantially.
So, anyway, any questions on page 33? Okay.
I do.
Is the new person in there, Brian?
Yes, yep, and there was, you know, as we go through, I can kind of point out, there's been a couple, I'd say like a handful of things that have changed over the last week since we've submitted the budget.
Yep.
And one of them is we just realized that the new employee is actually, his healthcare is going to change. So we'll see a decrease there.
Is that what?
His healthcare,
Oh,
he's not getting healthcare.
Oh,
Originally, he was going to be family. So he's actually getting a buyback, so I need to make that change. I couldn't make these changes once we submitted the budget.
that's a good.
So a couple of things have come up
Big
that
time.
will benefit.
But that's a benefit. I do have a question. I have two questions. Can you go over the stipends? Public Works Director, 420, the 600 for a maintenance operator, and then 160 for a maintenance operator?
Yeah, so this 420 is a cell phone stipend, which most department heads get. That's been in there for years. The stipend is actually additional. They get an extra, I think it's $20 a day when they work as, they have special licenses.
Yeah.
And Tim
Like
could probably
mechanic.
speak to this too, like, yeah, if they perform duties,
HVAC.
HVAC, right, which they need special
Special
licenses for,
designations.
they get an extra $20 a day.
And is that the 600 for that one maintenance operator?
Yeah, for the year,
Okay.
right, so
And
we're,
what about the 160?
that's
same
the
thing?
same thing, yep.
Okay.
So we based off previous years, we project how many days they'll perform those duties and come up with a number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on 33? Okay, 34?
Yes.
Yes.
The line 600,4010, there's a $13,000 increase, is that contractual?
Could you
Yes.
tell me what line item you're on? again?
Full-time wages?
Full-time wages?
Oh, gotcha,
Yes.
okay.
All salary increases are contractual.
Okay, and then on line, I brought my ruler so I can read this. Pensions,
That's, again,
are you estimating more retirees?
no, the state gives us a rate every year. So the rate went up for all town employees from 3.46 to 3.73. So that's MERS, that's the Rhode Island Pension Plan, municipal
It went up
employee.
to 3.73.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and then the police went up as well, so that's another thing that's attributing to our municipal.
And then the last line, line 600,4170, work uniforms.
That went up 27.
Yeah, is that, let's
Yes.
put it this way, have you gone out for bid?
That wasn't a bid.
That
And,
was a bid and that was the cheapest person you could find?
It was the only person that would find. After
See, I
twice.
don't
After
understand.
twice, that's the only person we get to do it.
I
So
just
that's-
don't understand.
I don't know either, but there's been a lot of times when stuff goes out to bid that the people just don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, but what about talking to other towns to find out who they're using for the same service?
I did talk to some, and I contacted 4 or 5 different uniform companies to try to get the bid. Once it was in the paper, so it was legal, I called Syntez, I called Universe to try to get them to bid, and
Sometimes
I
they
find
just-
it, I find it hard that there's only one bidder.
it's difficult to believe, but we're finding out more and more
I mean,
stuff.
especially something like uniforms,
But the school doesn't
cleaning,
say-
I mean, it's not rocket science.
Journal in Wesley Front.
I'm sorry,
We
I'm
can't
sorry.
make people bid.
No.
Maybe
No.
it's just too small on amount of money, they can't be bothered.
I don't know, they've got other companies around, but they just, I don't know. It's actually, the 77 should be 79, it's more figure and actually cover everything. It was like just under the 79.
Yeah, that was something that we discussed just today.
I pulled it out, we going through all my numbers at the end of the day, and just to make sure, and that was one. And then I informed Brian, but it was late, so that's why I
I
considered it.
understand. That's all I have.
So we're going to see a decrease just on that top section due to the healthcare, the change from family to
3,500.
3,500. So we're going to see a decrease of 15,000.
Which line?
It's going to be, a
15,000 what, Brian?
well, it's going to affect also the co-share.
Yeah.
So hold on, I can tell you the exact numbers.
So what
Under
line?
medical insurance, it's under
Oh.
medical insurance,
Under medical?
one is the 21, so we'll be covering 35.
Yeah.
But it has
Oh.
to negotiate too.
And then we're gonna add in the healthcare stipend for the buyback. All right, so the lines that are gonna be affected are gonna be, health and dental insurance is gonna be 186,465.
You want to just give us a number of that?
4110,
Yeah, 4110,
it's gonna be 186.
465. The co-share is now gonna be negative 38,882.
Was it Commissioner?
Cushion,
4111.
next one down,
Was it 185, 186, 465?
yes, 186, 465.
And then the buyback is gonna be 7,000. And we just, but again, I'll go back and,
Yeah.
doing this on the fly is
Yeah,
a little bit
that's fine.
tricky, but I can just kind of tell you roughly what the impact will be. Actually, hold on a second.
Okay.
So you went from family to having his wife take the, benefits.
Right, to a buyback, yep.
Good on the
But that's unpredictable, or really, whatever.
No, I know.
Well,
It's a crash.
I like to check it over because they're trying to.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe we should just mention it to them that these changes that they're gonna get to.
Yeah, so we were just discussing, like, some of these changes are a little bit more, like, there's a lot of factors involved, so some of these changes we can, if it's one line item that's not really salary section, it's, we decrease it or increase it, I can tell you,
That's
quickly.
fine, that's
But
fine.
some of the stuff, we'll probably get you the actual numbers in the morning.
That's okay, Brian, that's fine.
All right, anything in the general road maintenance section, of page 34?
Edward, I'm glad we haven't spent much on some
Yeah,
salt
salt
and
and
sand.
sand.
That was really nice. So far, so good.
Vehicle and equipment maintenance? About the same there.
I had questions actually on maintenance supplies, because we always seem to be around, 2,600 less. Is it possible to cut that, or are you expecting some?
We never spent it, I guess is what she's saying.
Yeah, you just haven't spent it.
You can take a little off of it. I mean, that's what they use for the janitorial supplies and like, they also, their winter maintenance supplies and stuff.
Oh, we haven't had soap in there for a few days, so let me see.
So can we do like 8,000 too, is that comfortable?
What,
Line 600, 5370,
okay, so 8,000?
yeah,
Yeah.
just get a little time.
You're taking it from where?
9 to 8 on the building.
Okay.
Maintenance supplies.
Oh, right.
Okay,
You bring this down to 8,000.
8,000. Next section, building and operations, anything there? Just curious on that electricity, I know it's negligible, but an increase, I thought we were in a pretty good place.
Yeah, yep, so we,
And it's only $110, I'm just curious, I thought,
yeah, and
Yeah, so go
I have a
down on that,
spreadsheet I can
not
provide you guys with all the electrical accounts, their usage and the new rate. I was actually, the new company we use, Constellation, we did get a lower rate, and it's more of a reallocation from one account, so, but the net increase is minimal. But you will see, 100 up here, and then another department down 100 or up. So the usage, again, is, 2 years.
Oh, that's good.
I do have, under compensation salary, if we go back to, I just have a question.
Which line item, Scott?
It'd be 600 tree warden. I know we're required to have a licensed arborist to be
Tree
the,
warden,
Oh, tree warden.
140.
yeah. We're required to have a licensed arborist, not everybody qualified to hold that position. Other than we've been taking down, how is that determination
So what are
made?
you using for?
Most of the trees that we're taking down, Scott, I mean, they're dead. We know that.
Yeah, well, I know that, but I'm saying about the tree warden, should he be getting 700, or should he be getting more, or less? What's that, other than we know that they have to be a licensed arborist, what is his function? Is he going around examining trees, or is the highway department doing that?
And, you know, like I said, most of the trees are pretty obvious, they're dead. But if we have a question, we do contact them. And if a resident has a question about a specific tree and there's a debate, you bring in a licensed arborist and it clarifies everything and it's not a problem. As far as justifying how much, that's not up to me, but
No,
I think
but
we
I'm
do
just
use
saying
them.
is that, considering the fact that dead trees are a big thing in town because of storms.
When we started that process, the tree removal list, he was involved with Mr. McGarry, myself, Tim, and other players, National Grid and such. So he was a part of that initial tree kickoff.
You know, because the person has to expected to have some level of credentials to be the
Yes.
tree warden.
And he does, and then Scott. Scott was really wonderful. Great work.
Okay.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, but being able to call him and saves us from liability, that we're not arborists and stuff like that, if we bring him in, very, very knowledgeable, and,
He'll tell you if it's dead or not. He can tell you.
and you know, what the best recommendation and course of action is.
Yeah, yep. And sometimes you just take the limbs down on the tree.
All right, page 35, motor fuels, anybody there, folks?
Yes. Why is diesel fuel estimated less by 5,000? And why is the gasoline estimated less?
Well, in the department head meetings, when we sat down with Tim, he explained to us that some of the newer trucks were using less diesel and more gas. So the truck we're proposing to buy this year, and the truck we bought last year,
Or more.
and again, he could probably speak.
I didn't think I went quite this far though, because I think gasoline, that's not gonna be enough, I don't think. Because you can look at the stuff we had last year, mile of winters we had last year, and we were over 10. The new truck that we are getting is gasoline. The truck it's replacing last year's mileage, all last year was. That truck used $1,400 worth of diesel fuel. So that we did put here 12,000 without any, you know, snow or any, with no winter, basically is what we have. So I really think that should go up a little bit. I think that probably should, gasoline should probably be around 14.
That seems
Reasonable,
reasonable.
reasonable times.
Well, you've never spent it, at least with this.
But I think it's the change of the truck. Especially going.
I thought we were just saying it's a little more efficient.
Every time you get a new vehicle, they are less and less efficient. It's unbelievable.
Less efficient?
Less. When we had the 290s, big trucks, 1990, those trucks would do at least double the mileage the fuel was in because of all emissions and stuff. It was, the newer ones were pushing 3 and 4 miles per gallon, where the others would be at 60s, I think. As bad as it seemed, you would think they knew that they would make them more efficient, but when it comes to trucks, that doesn't seem to be working, trust me.
Not the environment that you're raising things, but okay. Again, you've never spent it, but,
We don't know what next winter's gonna be either. We're lucky so far.
you guys want to do that to 14?
I don't mind doing that to 14, especially after the cut in the diesel, because I'm not sure that'll work either.
I always enjoy teasing Chucky Niles when he was, I've known Chucky, I knew Chucky for many years, and kidding him about where the fat and public works department budget is. But usually, historically, the public works department, when they want to cut expenditures in Hopkinton, it's a big department, and people are more likely to cut public works than they are the police, so.
Oh, so I don't know.
Just tell us what road you don't want us to plow. We got
Yeah.
you.
Well, Maple Court.
Maple Court, that's one.
You can cut that.
Thinking Karen Drive.
In the Ashway section of town.
Maple Court will be the
One Forest Road,
Just my driveway, you don't have to go to the.
Elizabeth Court.
What'd you say, Bob?
I just wanted to go to landfill.
Landfill, yeah, it's contractual.
I know it's contractual. Are they going to be continually going up 2,000 yearly? What do you think they're going to be doing?
We have a 3-year contract right now.
Yeah, but we're in the.
Two.
This coming fiscal year, beginning July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year is our last year.
Right, and so, do you have any idea what they're planning on doing, or have they?
No, Kathy, I called the town manager in Wesley, and we negotiated over the phone
Okay.
as far as the amounts and how many years. They've been pretty good though.
Oh, they've been great.
They've been
They've
really
been
good.
great. I can't argue with them.
He's potentially leaving, if not.
What's that?
He's potentially leaving.
Oh, Mark Warner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to Michigan, perhaps. Right? That's the guy I interviewed in Michigan,
Yes.
right? So anyway, he might not be around next time we negotiate.
If we find out who's leaving, we'll kind of sorry.
Knock on his door.
Anything else on page 35?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Tim, Penny, and David.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is our infamous planner. I saw him in action last night.
Yes, want to do the CIP?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't leave yet. Capital improvement. All right, so we got, the only item we got for DPW, it looks like 85,606. And that's what, half a dump truck, or is that a dump truck?
Is that from this year or last year?
Yeah, so it's, if you look at the page, it's a combination of a 3-year lease for the proposed truck this year, plus the second payment of the truck from last year.
Okay.
So, as, you know, just as an overall, you guys can see we've cut our CIP pretty drastically.
Yes, you have.
And it's down to very bare bones at this point. Well, at least compared to previous years, we're down to 147,000.
So the truck expense is the 8553?
Two expenses, it's like a lease and a partial.
I know, I'm just trying to decipher which the breakdown. Brian, is the 8553, is that the new one? Is that the,
If you look at that top section, it breaks down, it says one mid-sized plow, and then we're in FY21. If you look at the individual page,
oh,
Do it to Charlie.
I'm not looking at that, okay. No, it's in the,
Page one.
yeah, okay.
From the back.
Yeah.
The very back?
Yeah, we can do that.
What project number is it? I see that.
So it's the
Here we go.
the 28
And the 57.
and the 57.
Okay.
Have fun with your new vehicles.
One vehicle,
Fun new vehicles.
single.
Yeah, so the full-size plow that's here for 57,
Yep.
that would be
That's
a
half the
new,
price.
New purchase.
a new purchase.
Okay.
And of course, that's all dependent on whether the budget passes, one of those kind of things.
And 28,000 from the last year. Second installment of the last year. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Is that truck on a master price agreement, or do we have to look at it?
That's what it is.
Okay, list of land there, that's pages 22 to 23.
Night, thanks, guys. And gal.
Oh, the hot seat, Jim. Any questions on page 22? aside from the massive increase in front of you. Just kidding. Well deserved, by the way. I told you that on another day. Thank you.
It is.
Okay, nothing on page 22. Page 23. Anything there?
Revenue's going up, thank you very much.
Now, is it in there?
Well, some of the.
Oh, what's that?
fees- Some of the fees.
Development plan review, right, the fees, is it, right, that's what your department has, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's why it's
yeah.
going up. So
Okay, so that 10.3 is why it's,
part of it, although it probably also has to do with residential.
Oh, family, of course, you asked, sure.
so the 10.3 includes some solar revenue?
Quite a bit, yes.
Do you know what, is it all of the difference between 10.3 and 4? So is it 6,300?
Yeah, probably about 5,000 difference at least, yeah.
Okay.
All right, anything else on page 23?
So, one of the things that Joe Moreau asked is if we could kind of separate that out. So would that work or not?
Well, I think that, I think the best approach with this is what we had mentioned at the council meeting, and that is that when, you know, you designate a revenue with building department, whatever, but when it comes to specifically people wanting to know about, you know, this year, how much of that is solar, we need to do a separate sheet and have us a handout, especially at that hearing, when we hand out our proposed budget, and have that listed, what the solar revenue is this particular year, or,
Well, that's,
you know, so,
so in order to do that, all I'm asking
because we
is-
don't do it for anything else. We don't separate, because we have so many different revenues, but because people want to know, you know, they're hoping there's enough revenue there to deal with things, but as a separate handout. Not that handout, but a
No,
separate
no.
handout, what revenue. Yeah.
No,
That's already done, that spreadsheet exists, that's
Right,
yeah.
already done.
yeah, but I think people want
For this
transparency,
particular-
so all I'm asking, Brian, all I'm asking is to add a line item, make it 3401, and what part of that is planner revenue
Well,
is solar?
You gotta
Can do
realize
that?
that, I mean, the problem is, it's a projection, right?
It isn't it?
Yeah.
So we could, yeah, I guess, if we could add another line, yeah, sure. It's just a
And then you add that
projection.
line and people would
Well,
be able to
again,
see it. That's
This is
all I'm asking.
democracy, so if everybody,
It's
we have
also,
to do a
it's
consensus.
an arbitrary number, you know, or we could say it's 5, we could say it could be 7. We don't really know, it's a
Well,
projection.
how did you get 10.3? You got it from, okay, then
Well,
you
that's a
said
budgeted
5.
amount.
That's all I'm asking. You gotta have a line
I
in order to
disagree.
collect it. That's what I
would
see.
agree. I think that needs to be an entirely separate page. I agree with Sylvia, that we can do a page that says, these are the fees that we anticipate.
Well, yeah.
But we can do that separately, but not within, because I can just see someone saying, well, I want to know what that commercial project in specific, and I want a separate
No,
line.
no,
item.
no, no,
No,
I
we're
wasn't
not gonna
saying
do
that. I wasn't saying that.
I
All
know
I was
you weren't.
saying
I know
was
you weren't.
have one line
Mhm.
that says solar, and
Exactly.
especially when he said that the majority of the increase from 4,000 to 10.3
Or all
was
10,
solar.
but-
Those
No,
numbers, you
no,
have
that's
proof
not
of
what
where
he
it
said.
comes
I
from.
know that, but he may.
What's that?
they-
I
Yeah.
asked him, he
Where it
said
comes
5
from.
grand.
I'd like to say, I'd like to back Councilor Davis. The bottom line is, this is the way I look at the budget year. General budget has a serious financial impact on this town. There's there's at least a possibility, if not probability, that the Hopkinton budget will be defeated again if the taxes go up. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the reality as I see it. And people are really talking about solar, and it's been solar that's gonna have a substantial financial benefit. And it would behoove this council, put an asterisk and just say at the bottom, because of community interest, this is the anticipated revenue generated, but so this includes 6,000, which is the anticipated revenue from solar, or however you want to work it, because I'm going to tell you, the people in this town are very concerned about solar. They're concerned about the element in discussion about how much revenue is going to be raised.
And I think an asterisk is not good enough, I think we need.
So anyway,
Well,
let's just do a
anyway,
consensus.
so we gotta,
what you want.
right, so I understand what you're saying, you and Sharon, but at the end of the day, we've got a spreadsheet that dictates all of the revenue. And again, I talked to Brian about this, it depends on when it comes in, you know, right? I mean, certain fees come in right away, and
It
then,
is, that's the biggest problem we're having is that we don't know, so if we have that list of projected, approved, and then possible, we don't know when any of that revenue is gonna come in. It's all kind of when they go live,
get the
right?
interconnection.
So-
So it's not really included in this budget at all?
It is.
But if it is, then make it a specific line item where it should be.
That's up to you guys, yeah.
And then you can collect it all on a separate spreadsheet sheet. Be very easy to go through the budget, say, okay, this line is a solar line, so we put that on your separate
I
spreadsheet.
think generally the information that you're looking for is in backup documents
Yeah.
that are not in the budget
Right.
itself.
But it should
They're
be.
backup documents that
Give it
support
to you as a backup.
what's in here.
But
No, I
So
want it
anyway.
for the people.
Yes or no?
No, I,
I'm no, you're yes, we want to consensus.
no.
I'm no.
Okay, then something happens.
can I just
Then
say
you're not
something?
gonna satify people.
Well, that's too bad. When we go to the hearing, we can tell them everything. We can hand it out.
Yeah, right.
Okay, can I respond?
Well,
Again, it's a consensus, so, yeah.
I know, let me respond. The bottom line is that this town council has a responsibility to get a budget passed in this town that won't revert back to the previous year's budget. That should be our number one concern
And let's
politically,
do
I do think politically, but the bottom line is, most people don't go to hearings. I've been the town moderator. I know that from personal experience, and most of us have been
So
there.
we're in
Right,
this
you've been here.
14 years.
We've done it, Scott.
But the bottom line is when people vote on the town budget, if Charahoe is not really whacked, they're gonna go after the town budget.
We understand that.
But Charles is the one that's the problem.
Yeah, I
That's the
understand
point.
that.
And we will have.
all right, let's move on.
Okay.
We're going to have a separate sheet for it, you'll have all the information you want.
People will think that that's fake.
Okay, fine.
I'm sorry, I would like for it to be a line item. I'm still making that point.
So
And
page
then
20,
you can add the line items.
Let's go on.
page 23, are we all set with, Mr. Lanford? Easy peasy. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good night.
Good night, drive carefully.
Take care, Jim. Thank you.
Sherry Desjardins, Building and Zoning, pages 20 and 21.
And she's like, oh boy, if I gotta go after my revenue.
Yeah, and we will, we'll ask them to be separate.
Hi,
How are we doing?
okay. I have one question on page
Yes,
20.
sure.
On page 20, just a general question. And it's really it must be the certified building official, and my question is, how will this look when we share the building official with Richmond? Or is that it?
That is it.
That is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bill, I know we've advertised, did we get any applicants for the CBO?
We have two.
Oh,
We have two.
what about the guy
The
that's...
first time we advertised, we had one. So I talked to Karen Pinch, town administrator in Richmond. She suggested that we extend the deadline for 30 days to get some additional applicants. I agreed, so we re-advertised, and the deadline is February 26th. We now have two, and generally they come in at the end. So we wanted to increase the applicant pool so we'd be able to make a better selection.
Did Bob apply?
No.
Just ask one.
Those salaries that those CBOs are getting, they're in that $80,000, $90,000.
Yeah, right, but that's what we're getting, that's what we're offering, right?
Yeah, we're offering 70, there's a spread from 71 to 80.
Okay.
So hopefully
And
we'll
how
get
many
some
hours is of the 40 is us?
24.
24.
So, I'm surprised he didn't...
I tried to get Bob.
Okay.
And
Seems like a nice guy, I don't know him that well.
and so 16 is Richmond?
Yes.
Okay.
So the salary and benefits are split according to those
Okay.
percentages.
Thank you.
And he'll be an employee of us,
Yes.
position you. Okay, anything else on page 20? Page 21, compensation and salary, do you have
I
Barbara?
have a question on line 300-4105, the life insurance. It was 250 in 17-18, and it's again in 2021. Is there a particular reason why it went down and then went back up?
Yeah, because we had someone in the position for temporarily.
Oh,
So we had a full-time employee, so we budgeted for his life insurance, and then he left a couple months later.
Oh, that was the guy with the Cranston.
Right, right.
All right, thank you.
So yeah.
That's okay. It's all
And then the
right.
increase now, yeah.
No, it's only a question.
Yes, Sharon.
In building and zoning revenues, that,
Oh, no, wait, no, that's the.
you're not there yet, okay.
Yeah, the tech services, anything, the pass-through, whatever, supplies, maintenance, and operation. That's great. Yes, Sharon, building and zoning revenues.
Okay, the 230,000, is that the difference between 200, I'm sorry, is that where
Yes.
the solar revenue is?
Yeah, we have a lot of solar revenue.
So we're going to actually increase that number. Sherry and I sat down again today and kind of went through a list a little bit more thoroughly on the other fees. So the 230 would be solar, and then we think we could safely add another 70 for other fees. So that would bring that up to 300,000.
Wonderful.
And, I'm sorry, one more time,
200.
70 is
In addition to the 230.
Yeah.
So the other permit fees, so like you were asking, the split would be 230 and 70. And
And
then,
I just think, again, I'm gonna make the point, if you made it a 34, I don't know what number, maybe 3406 or something, that was revenues that was specifically solar, so it could show, then people would have no problem understanding that, yes, there is revenue coming. That's just my suggestion.
And these are only the fees.
The one-time fees,
The
right?
one-time permit.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else for page 21? Okay. That's it for Sherry, we got.
Good night, good evening.
Take care.
Good night, Sherry.
yeah,
What
okay,
happened
so,
with that building, Sherry?
hold on, before we go on, I just wanted to point out that the part in this budget, there's an increase in hours from 29 to 32 for the part-time employee.
Right. That's
So-
Pat planned.
Yes. So I just wanted to know that you guys knew that that was the increase in the part-time wages.
But she still doesn't get health care, though?
She does. She will
She
pay
does,
off.
okay,
Yeah,
so-
she's not currently,
All right, so, page 20. So the part-time, you're not showing that?
No, we are. It's all in there.
Not on my piece of paper.
It's what page 20.
Mine only has certified building and zoning.
Oh, yeah, it's not, no, the change, that's because the proposal, you're right, I'm sorry. That it is not in there currently. It is, because it wasn't in our original budget. This is something that is one of those changes that came.
percolating a while.
Right. So there was I have a list here, there was the increase in revenue, and then there was the increase in her healthcare and the additional, what is it?
So what is the health care? Is she doing family or single?
Yeah.
Yes,
So she's doing 21,910, and dental will be 1,040,
correct.
and co-share is whatever the co-share is. You're
Right.
figuring that out. 5,041, I guess.
So, yep,
And she said she was going from 24,
No, 29 to 31?
29 to 32.
32,
From 29.
29 to 32.
32.
yeah, per week.
Hours.
Mhm.
The reason we made it 32 is so she could work 44 days. We would just like to have her.
So that,
And what-
So I'll work that increase in as well, but again, the increase in revenue is gonna far exceed that increase. So from the current budget you're looking at. So there'll be an increase total between the additional hours and the healthcare benefits of an increase of 22,000, which will be offset slightly by the co-share. And then we'll see an increase of 70,000 in revenue in this department.
Okay.
Very good. That's excellent. Yeah, you have seen that in a while.
After all that yelling, it should be done so bad after all.
Sherry, how's your building? Down there?
Oh, the studio?
Yeah, yeah.
Coming along real slow.
It's just so much work, yeah.
Yeah.
Takes time.
It's just, every time I walk in, I just feel like there's something, we find something new. I mean, the roof was leaking, and,
Yeah.
you know, you just, oh my gosh, so, we're getting there. I'm at the point where I'm kind of setting a deadline for myself, so hopefully, one day I can do it, just beginning of May.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Sherry, thank you.
Good night.
Have a good
Good
night.
to see you.
You as well.
Next is the interim town clerk.
We have lots of commissions under there, and Harvey is here, so Harvey, if you'd like to consider the board of
Yeah, we'll do
commission
that.
as part of it, so that Harvey can address whatever he needs to address, and we can go back to if you want.
Yes, that's a good idea. Boards and commissions,
That's not tonight.
Well, boards and commissions, if it
it's
is.
on the agenda.
Oh boy.
Some are different.
That one slipped by me.
Oh,
Okay. That's page 48 and 49.
I have, I was in commission.
what was it?
I already grabbed them.
48, 49.
48 and 49.
Yes.
It was just these, folded. Because I would put under her.
Page 49.
Page 49 is Harvey's.
She's the liaison.
So what's the,
$1,000 increase on it?
$1,000 increase in supplies?
I didn't put that in there.
Okay.
Oh,
I know last year we talked about doing it, and of course the budget, you know,
Got defeated.
got defeated and went back to the 3,500. And so maybe that's why it showed up that way. I didn't make a request. I figured you guys were looking for
yeah.
every penny you could find, so
Brian,
Can you live with less?
Oh, yeah.
beg pardon?
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Can you live
we
with
take
less?
1,000 off that.
Oh, yeah.
Can you live with less or not?
Under the
Since you
supplies.
did-
Yes, I have it in mind that the 3,500 should be sufficient. Just real quick, what we're doing this time that's different, that Bill has been working with me, we drafted a pretty nice request for qualification to hire a consultant to do our mapping and kiosk posters and stuff, but we've kind of been in limbo on that for about a year, and we're getting behind. And we have, like the Land Trust is going to have their 20th anniversary over at Crown Farm. I'd love to get the maps and the kiosk posters done, and we don't have someone to do that. And I think the RFQ, the way we've got it drafted, is a very nice way for us to be able to have someone on retainer, sort of like the town engineer, to do the projects when we need them done, and only when we need it done, we would have an hourly rate, and we would have, we can give them examples of what we produced in the past, so they can say, it should take me about 10 hours to do that, or whatever it is, so we have a way to budget it. And that would also be something that could run for several years, just like your engineer. So I think we can just fall into a nice system of being able to deal with what we need to and nothing excess.
I know you just drafted that RFQ, right? So we don't know what it's gonna cost, right?
No, it's gotta go out to bid.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So you're assuming it's gonna be over $5,000, right? Because if you're gonna go up to bid for something like that, it's over $5,000, right?
Well, it depends on how much services they need. It's on an as-needed basis.
we're not going to exceed our budget.
Exactly.
Yeah, the budget's great.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
if we run up and we don't get everything done we want, then we just have to put it on hold and wait till the next budget.
Or you could ask the land trust.
What's that?
Or you could ask the land trust. They got plenty of money.
I don't know whether the.
At least it knows that full well.
Well, really, well, it's going to be a tight budget.
Let on to the Conservation Commission, they do a very good job, and they're taking a lot of initiatives for the town, and Harvey's a great leader of that.
Why don't I make a proposal, or Scott, you could, we split the difference. Instead of 45, make it an even 4, just bump them up $500, just, I don't know, it's up to you guys.
Well, they could probably,
Didn't I just hear Harvey say he was okay with 35?
Yeah.
Then that's what we go with.
Yeah, I would go with 35.
Yeah, that's,
I will do
We
whatever you
haven't
want.
got
I mean,
an
we will,
RFQ yet, so.
No, but
if
we're
we
not-
had more, we would probably crank out some more.
Yeah, I mean, if you start paying somebody on an hourly basis, I think it's gonna choke.
This is a long-range project for us. We don't get everything done this year. As long as we get some stuff done, we can push some more into the next year. I just love the idea of seeing, every year seeing some progress out there on the trails.
maybe we get some grants to make up that 500 or 1,000.
It's also a start, and it's a start, and let's see how it continues.
We'll
Because I think-
know better
Right.
after, even in the next few months, we'll have a pretty good idea of what it really takes.
Excellent.
Okay,
That's-
so,
Yeah, we got a budget meeting the night of the next conservation. I know.
okay, thank
We're
you.
gonna meet in there.
So you
I'm
want-
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
You guys got
I'm
enough,
trying to get you a
you
little.
got enough penny picking to do.
We can always try to come.
so you get that, Brian?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I guess that's it for Harvey, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I believe all the other land, the zoning board and the planning board, I think they're pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Zoning board clerk stipend was cut because you they were doing all the extra meetings because of
Yeah.
child difficult matters.
Yeah, right.
So it's come to a conclusion in this last year, there's been months when they've canceled. So
Right.
those have been, for zoning board's been repeated.
That's page 48. Any questions on that? Any other questions on page 49, except conservation? Pretty much the same.
You know, the tax review after this revale gets done, there'll probably be some challenges that they're gonna have. Tax board reviews at its full strength.
We've never had expenses in tax for review,
No.
they've always been minimal. It's nothing, it comes right out of Lisa's office, and when you applies in there.
Stipends for clerk, I mean, if there's additional,
There's-
that, I think Liz should probably address. She's, before you, next time, I think she's scheduled for the 13th.
So, that's got full strength right now.
Yes, you have 3 members, yeah.
Let's start out with the clerk, I guess, page 7 and 8. Go back first. Any questions on page 7? We have a new clerk, clerk in the clerk's
Yes,
office.
we have a new
Clerk in the clerk's
clerk,
office.
yeah. There's a senior clerk and a clerk.
And Lee's the senior clerk?
Reed.
Lee's the
Yeah.
senior.
She took over for Laura. I mean,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I haven't even been in yet to see the desk arrangement.
Well, it's not too complex.
I know.
We took one system and put it in front of me. and-
Yeah.
Pretty good.
We got canvases and probate, anything there? Nobody's problem. Okay.
There was an increase in elections. Right.
Yeah, I know that.
That's on page 9.
Because we got a
Because
presidential
we've got,
primary this
well,
year.
presidential primaries primaries in this current fiscal year that we are in now. And then you have a,
Oh, when is the primary?
28th of April. We have 2 events in April, general budget, presidential
boy.
primary. In June, we have Hopkinton budget. And then the next fiscal year, you have the September primary, the general election in November, and then the following spring, you'll have the child budget. So there is an increase there. For the presidential election, the Board of Elections usually requires we have 4 places open and additional staff hired, so we increased it up a little bit.
I think, yeah, I don't see much of a change from Like $400, that's about it.
And then on the previous page, on page 8, revenue, we put in a little more revenue at the bottom.
What's the status right now of preservation of town records?
What's the status? Do you mean?
I mean, how complete or how far is it?
Well, the records are always being watched and maintained. We have
I'm
somebody.
talking about,
who
you
comes-
had an outside person.
We do have an outside agency, it used to be Browns River Bindery, and now it's Co-File. I understand Co-File is being taken over by another group, but we have a representative who comes in and he evaluates the condition of the old books. And if there's something that's a problem, we can use that $1,000 that's in here, but it usually takes 1 or 2 rounds, and they'll book it for 1 fiscal year, and then, it's not
So usually
inexpensive.
need around 2,000
Yeah.
average for a book.
Yep, and we try to replace the covers, because the covers also get worn down, the land evidence vault gets used constantly, and, you know, the rollers wear them down, so we try to keep them up, maintained. We also have another, fund that we can use as well, so.
I think you've done a really good job.
I think
You've
it was started by
With
Jerry
Jerry
Aldrich.
Aldrich, oh yeah, she fought for that, didn't she?
And reasonably so.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, I remember it used to be 5,000.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Well, I think the
Times
task
were
at
different,
the
there was,
time.
there were
the
budgets
that
for
were falling
times were
apart.
different, right?
The chairman wasn't so high.
No.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and she was there really, and it was new, and then there were people that donated, a couple of people that actually donated
Probably
to
that's
help.
the case, but I don't remember.
No, that's okay.
Paying attention.
When did you start, by the way? What year was it?
I started in 1991, part-time in
That's
the
what I
office.
thought, that's what
But
I
I
thought.
worked on the board of canvassers for 2 years before that. And then, but I was only 11 months when I was
Mhm.
hired.
Mhm.
So,
Lisa, I have a question. So, on revenue,
revenue.
you added, up to 210, can you let me know just generically why?
Why we increased
I
it?
think it's great.
Well, it was up at the end, let's see, for the actual for 1819 was up over the 180 that was estimated, and I think we did kind of a little projected, we have to be careful. And that's why Brian was a bit conservative, I think, in putting it up to 210, but I do think that we've had good turnover of properties, the
Tax stamps.
tax stamps revenues come in, and another thing that's driving some of our revenue, we find that this, the real ID, that
The what?
Real
real
ID,
ID,
new licenses.
that new licenses, people have been coming in to prove, because the DMV will not accept certain documentation, and you have to have extra documents. So we've
To
seen
get that ID.
vital records increase a little bit. You know, that's not going to happen forever, but this year it's been busy with doing vital records.
Every little bit.
Yeah.
That's right, it does. Thank you.
Well, I mean, as, you know, as a person who, into genealogy, and people need documentation, it can be very pricey for people that qualify for SAR and DAR and Mayflower and those type of
Yeah.
things.
All right, any other questions on page 8 for the clerk?
Mm.
No. Page 9? Anything there? This is the same page. I think that's it for Lisa. Okay. Town council is next, page 45 and 6. The big money, the big money.
I do, I'll probably keep this the same, but I do think the town council should have to raise. I think-
No,
I agree, Scott.
No, because, you know, very
We can't
seriously,
do it anyway.
No, we can't do it anyway, we can do it for the next council.
but I think,
Did you know that we can't do that for ourselves? I don't know if
I've
you
read
know
that before.
It's true.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is that, nobody runs the town council for the money, but the thing is that you need to give some people more than just a token.
Well, it was too high a long time ago, and as far as I'm concerned, it's plenty. And
I
it
disagree.
was too high a long time
I
ago.
work every day,
Well, we understand that.
so I think it should be higher, and, you know, think
Well, if you wanted to hire for the next, whatever it is.
council, right?
Right, so the next council is not 2021, isn't it 2021? Wouldn't that be the next council?
Yeah, this will be for this coming fiscal year, right?
No,
But again, for the next,
Or am I wrong?
the new council that's installed, we can't give
Well,
ourselves a
the, well,
raise.
the election is in.
Right,
right.
Yeah, when,
Yes.
yeah, we
It's
have,
20.
yeah, that's.
So isn't this that one? Isn't that this
Yes.
that budget?
Yes, yeah, right.
So,
Yes.
what did you think?
Oh, I don't know.
I haven't studied the thing, but if you look at what other cities and towns get, at council, that's what you really have to do is
Even if it's
study.
$500 a piece, it's $2,500 aggregate, it's not a lot of money. It shows, and again, it's all what you put into it, so I think,
That's true.
you know, and I think, you know, again, I wouldn't be receiving it, but I think folks should have a little bit more.
And I think this has been, and also Richmond is very similar, Western
I
is
think
similar.
there are a lot of
Wesley's
towns that are actually less than
Less than
us.
us,
Believe it or
and,
not,
Yeah, Wesley's higher.
and
Well, of course,
Wesley's higher, but not by.
They got 22,000 people.
4,000, they've got three
Yeah.
times the number of people we have. But they're not double what we are. So, you know, I think that's perfectly acceptable. We did not, you know, you don't do.
You have to look at what the salary
I
is.
think we should put an increase in it.
I don't know how much, but.
Well, if
Think
anyone
about
here
it
thinks
first.
it's an issue, then do the research and. come
You're
back.
right.
I will check on some of the other towns, but I know that years ago,
I
I
think it's
haven't
been-
checked on lately, too high.
When's the last time the Stephen got an increase? I can't.
I do have that because
Before we, any of us got elected, 2006, so
14 years.
before
I
that.
think we have this discussion every year.
Right.
So I think I have a
We all say
spreadsheet.
no.
I have a spreadsheet though from, yeah, I'd have to find it, but I do have a history of the stipends over extended period of time. Yeah,
What's going on? I think 500 is the start, but that's okay.
let me see if I can find it real quick.
We'll
If not, yeah, we could come back to that
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay.
We won't make any motions or anything like that, or consensus.
You know, you've got to contact towns like Gloucester and Situate, Worcester.
That are similar.
This size, yeah.
That's good.
That's what we used to do when I was on the finance board.
Yeah, the Department of Revenue produces a report too with every municipality in the state.
Yeah.
So you don't have to call anybody, it's all readily available.
Okay.
I think I knew that, but do they break down individual council members or just the council completely?
Completely, yeah, they don't break down individuals.
Like Situate's got a 7-member council, we have a 5. Most of the smaller towns have a 5, but there are some that have 7, like Situate.
All
Yeah.
the information's online.
I'm sure the League of Cities and Towns have that.
Yeah, it's, yeah, exactly.
All right, any questions on page 46?
Yes,
Yes, please, Sharon.
the town contingency,
Yes.
I would like that there was transparency of how this money can be tapped and the attendant rules governing this. I don't think that just one person should make the decision to use the contingency. I think
Well, it
One
never-
person does.
Yeah, we all.
Oh, you know how it works,
You
Sharon?
can do.
No,
well,
whenever there's an expense, let's suppose,
I
the
will,
chairs.
wait,
so-
I
oh,
will tell you why I'm talking
Oh,
about it, all right? Because there was a study done as part of the solar stuff that Frank approved. It was less than
Oh, yeah,
$2,000.
right, right.
So,
Yeah, we-
but I just think that we should have discussed it as a town council. I don't think one person should have just made that.
Where did that show up in our budget?
Yeah, I don't know, what was that for?
It was the
I thought it was
realtor,
like
it was the realtor,
Yeah.
whatever that cost was,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
where did the expense come
I
for that
forget, it was
realtor?
like 1,700.
I don't remember off the top of my
Because
head.
1750.
It's
Yeah,
not-
and I
it's
thought it
not
came
here.
out of contingency.
It's not here.
I don't think so.
It's-
I think it may have came from professional services.
I think it came
Sharon,
from,
look at the
if I had
number.
to guess, I think
It says-
it was engineering.
It says,
Engineering.
yeah, it says $391.
And that wasn't the only one that wanted it. too.
And it wasn't,
It was on
So
the
it didn't come
planning
from
board.
council
didn't come
contingency.
Yeah.
okay, but I'd like, wherever it came from, I
You want to know?
want to know, and
Maybe you
I
think it
and I
came
think
from
it should be a decision.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say probably the engineering fund.
It was
because we have
engineering.
restricted capital
Okay,
revenue.
but still, I think that if the town council is spending money, it should be voted on. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, agree.
I'm just saying for general.
But I wasn't the only one that wanted it.
But I didn't know about it.
Well,
And
should
I,
ask.
no, if you wanted to get it done, you should ask
But,
me. So that we, all of us
So
were included in the
just,
decision. That's all I'm
No,
saying.
we had a matter, we
So
had to-
everybody's on the same page, at the hearing, Scott asked for it. He didn't say, I want to pay for it, or how we're going to pay for it, or it's going to cost money, but Scott said, this is what I want to know. And so
If the
Frank
values.
Frank went and found out what he wanted to know. Now, could we do it different? Sure. But just so you know, he didn't decide to do it. He asked for it at a hearing. So at the next meeting, he brought the information in.
Yeah,
So
but
I-
since I was surprised, I didn't know the
So-
background.
There's a lot,
So
there's a
that's-
lot, there's a lot.
That happened all in front of us. And is there a different way to do it? Sure.
And
But that's how it happened. Just
But
so you
Okay.
know.
but
Thank you,
legitimate
but I didn't know.
Oh, no, it is.
I'm just letting everybody know that's how it happened.
And it was a legitimate question.
Yeah, okay,
Thank
It
you.
wasn't council contingency,
okay.
by the way.
Yeah, because it couldn't come from
Yeah,
there.
right.
All right.
But do we, and I think this 391, isn't this something that we voted on?
That must have been, oh, wait a
What
minute.
are you talking about?
The
Year to
chairs.
date, there's $391
I
spent.
don't know.
When
It's
we did
flowers
the
or
chair,
something.
we did the chairs, where would that be reflected?
the 1,160.
That-
It could have been, if I had to guess, I mean, I had it.
That's right,
I
we
could
did it
find
just
out.
before July 1.
It's probably the
It was
speakers
it
and
was
the
old
mics.
bus.
Speakers?
Okay.
Wasn't there stuff for like,
Yes,
that the IT, I think the IT department spent something on there
yes, I think
because
you're right. I
for,
think
you
you're
guys
right.
had the meeting somewhere else and the speakers were
I
there.
remember that.
Right.
So I think it was IT, but it was for the
That's
council.
fine, that's fine. I just want transparency.
It's fine.
That's all. That was my only question. So thank you.
Okay. All right, so next up is general government, pages 5 and 6. Okay. Anything there?
Yes.
Yes. Start up the top, anything there for health? Next is services.
Yes, contract services is up 3,200.
We added coastline EAP,
Oh, well,
which came out of contract services from police and into general government. It was an agreement that we all had when we initially set up coastline EAP, which Bill can probably explain to you what that is. It's for support for employees for mental issues or things at home. It was something that we really needed from an HR perspective, and we put it in at least a year or two ago, but it was under police, and it really, because he had the money to do it that year, but it really doesn't belong there. It should be under general government because it's a townwide
Yeah.
thing.
Okay,
And then also, there was an increase
to
in
state aid
our,
to
no.
libraries.
under that line, there was another increase to our Patriot disposal. So our contract, I think, expired, so now there's an extra cost for our trash pickup for town.
that's all under contract services, okay.
Okay, and then the state aid to libraries.
That's all driven by the state, they give us a report. And that's a pass-through anyways.
Yeah.
So it comes in from the state, and then we just pay it out to the
Through
library.
libraries,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, pass through.
Geez, no bounties? Nobody's come in?
Okay, and then
No, I'm
I'm gonna
surprised.
take one out of Scott.
under building and operations,
There'd be too many people trying to get it.
The competition.
property and casualty insurance.
Yeah, so we added, when we did the street lights, so there's a combination of two things. They're projecting, the trust gives us projections for the upcoming rates. There's a 7% increase from last year is what they're projecting. They actually said 7 to 10%, and I went with the low, just because historically speaking, and they usually come in on the lower side, but they want us to budget conservatively, so they tell us a range. So, and then we also had to increase our liability coverage to 5 million when we purchased the streetlights. And again, this is because it wasn't in last year's budget. So it should have been in last year because we bought the streetlights 2 years ago. But we had to increase our policy for that. So there was an increase for that.
Just as a side note, I know we increased our liability to 5 million. It seems like some of those towns that are getting sued by Green Development, Exeter and Coventry, 100,000 in liability. That's what I thought the article said. How is that even possible?
I think they're suing them for like 200 million.
280 between the two towns. I've got $1 million myself, personally.
Going from one, going from 1 million to 5 million was good for the town.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, I
absolutely.
If it was
It's
mandatory.
probably still low.
It's still low.
Still low.
Yeah.
You know, but anyways, it's just put it in perspective, it's like, whoa.
I mean, look at that budget, at the total, $181,660, when you go back to the 17-18 budget. I mean, things like that, I'm like, oh, isn't that nice? It's lower, it's way lower.
All right, any other questions on page 5? Page
So-
6? Yes, Brian?
Well, I'm not looking at page numbers, but we do need to address the legal fees.
Yeah.
Because there was some things that came up after our budget was submitted. So there are some increases there.
Right,
Under what line item?
The solicitor and litigation.
yeah.
So what numbers are you changing?
So based off the proposal that was put together, our solicitor cost is actually going to go up to, what do we say here, to 192.
Can we,
And what
are
about,
we competitively bidding that? Can we?
No, those,
I'm just asking.
Yeah,
those don't go out for competitive bidding, those are for professional services that don't require competitive bidding.
It's a
Generally,
state,
it's,
But,
It's not something you can bid, unfortunately.
well,
for
but you
professional
can do,
services, it's, you don't go out to bid. Or what
Right.
happens,
it's a state law.
it's an exception in the purchasing policy.
okay, I'm just.
So what happens is that when the council wants to choose a person to hire as their legal advisor, they generally advertise and then interview. And when they did that the last time, they selected Kevin Kellis.
I understand, but how
So,
do you decide to get someone else if you want to?
you can.
Any time the council can decide, well, then you have, if you have a contract with who you have to deal with that. But ordinarily, when the new council comes in November, they can make some decisions. Do you want to interview for new people? Do you want to keep them on for a month while you interview? I mean, that's what you do.
Right.
Okay, I just.
so generally speaking, you don't really want to go with the lowest bidder on legal counsel.
You gotta go with it.
Like someone comes in and they give you a number, you're like, yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
They know nothing about zoning, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, but I realize that's a qualitative,
right.
it's a qualitative decision.
It's
And I've
something,
dealt with that.
yeah, council decides and they interview.
His base pay this last fiscal year was 80,000 based on a certain number of hours at 160 per hour. Right, Bill, I think, Brian, I know I sent that to you. So then he proposed an increase starting July 1 of, I think, to $200 an hour?
I have it right here.
So the base was 80?
80,000 annual, yeah, X amount of hours of regular work, right, non-litigation work. And then, so he bumped that, he wanted to bump up to 12.5, I think it was to 92.5 for the base rate, non-litigation, and then litigation hourly, he wanted to increase from 200 to 225.
Right, and that's the next line. So,
Yeah.
and that's not just really driven by him because it also includes grievances,
Correct.
which we've had to deal
Which
with
has
a
been
few
the cost,
recently.
right.
So,
And so he's gonna go from 160 an hour to?
To 200
To
on non-litigation, right?
well, that's not just him. So,
Yeah.
so his portion is 152. Then we pay Veronica,
That's
or Mike Cosmolino
He's
gets
30,000.
30K, and Veronica gets
It's
12.
Right,
So
And
that,
then we're good.
Say that again, Veronica's what?
12.
12.
12,000 a month,
And Mike Cosmolino,
it's 2,500 a month for 30,000.
right, so he's 30,000, yep.
He does the police,
And then Kevin
prosecutorial.
McAllister's firm is 152, which makes up the 192.
And the litigation line has been robust?
Yeah, we need to, no, that's a combination of everything.
Well, I know it's a
So-
combination of everything, but Vin in particular is under that one.
He's definitely under that,
Where is
grievances,
that going?
contract negotiations.
Right, what is it staying at 82 or is it?
No, that's gotta go to 90. I think we need to put it to at least 90. And if you look, I highlighted the last year's actuals because we have a restricted account that we set up for legal fees.
Mhm.
And in going into last year, we had $72,000 and we spent all of it and then some.
Negative 6,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's negative 6,000. So we've spent this amount
And
plus.
you want an accounting, that's solar, by the way.
So
Well, that's why you need to get rid of them.
Is that,
Wait a minute, how much did solar cost us?
oh, I don't.
He'd have to digest that, but it's the predominant amount of that.
No, so we spent, 65 plus the 72 from the restricted account. The reason I bring that up is because that restricted account is crucial. Like, we need to fund that restricted account this year because we have 0 left in legal fees, which comes into play when we go to contract negotiations, if we have grievances. A big portion of that 72, I believe it was 55,000, was for a grievance that we had to pay out
Yeah.
last year. So
Oh.
it happens. We need something in our restricted account. So what I was proposing, and it was that we did a warrant item on a couple line items, specifically salt and sand and building and zoning. Whatever we don't spend this year, we transfer that into the restricted account.
Salt and sand and OT.
And overtime,
Yeah.
right. It's because we've had such a mild winter, we're not, historically we've spent that, but this year we don't think we will. So whatever we underrun, I think we should allocate to the legal fee restricted account, because we have contract negotiations, we have a lot of ongoing litigation,
Right.
we have ongoing grievances, so we have a lot of things going on, and to have a negative balance in our restricted account is a problem.
You know
So
what
can-
would be helpful to me is if you would look at these and what you're talking about right now and put it on a piece of paper for us so that we can.
I have it all, I have the
Yeah,
total.
because I think that's important because this is crazy.
Yeah,
The number is nuts. And so we need to look at it and think about it and what can we do different? Is there anything we can do different? And I don't know, but it's something we need to mull over because this cost, just the number.
It's hard to avoid when you have to.
I understand, yeah, so once he, and then you're like, oh, that's right, we had to pay out that amount and that's why this is
But
awful.
it's going to go up anyway.
But anyway.
You've got Scott Hill and Maxwell.
So at
Yeah,
least
but those are
Love's
fine.
is over, Love's is done, and they're not going to Supreme Court. So at
No.
least that, no, they're not. No, they're not gonna appeal it. So there's, but I don't know what that expense has been, so you could help us.
I have an itemized
That'd be
list,
great.
I actually
That's the
do.
amount,
Because when I come up with a projection, I look at that specifically, what cases are gone,
It is
if there's any
going,
big
yeah.
ticket items, if they're gonna, I would factor them in, it's coming in again this year, like payouts and those type of things. So, yes, we exceeded by a substantial amount, but again, 55,000 of it was a one-time thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're not gonna budget for that this year, right?
Agreements.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it was a total of 130, I want to say that we actually spent last year on litigation, but we had that restricted account, so we could transfer that over, but now it's gone, so.
What happens when you have, as we know, we're using previous year's budget, okay? And you look at an item and you say, well, okay, the previous year's budget was $227,000, but we spent $237,000. How do we reconcile, or you look at the front page and you see where the budget, the total town budget was a number, but we exceeded it? How do we reconcile that? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it's all broke, so there's a summary of
The
budget.
actuals versus the budget.
Yeah, it's on the first page. It's the
Right,
bu-
right.
And then all the backup is here.
Right,
So I,
okay, so for instance, when you go to that first page, and you see, the fiscal year 18-19, okay?
yeah,
And the number is 6346, and of course in 1920, it's the same number, 6346.
correct.
But when that number gets, you can't overspend it, correct? You can move things around.
No, we can overspend.
How come?
Well, because if we have contractual obligations, we can't not pay people.
But doesn't it come down to, oh my God, we have contractual, we're gonna
Like
go over
the
the budget,
lease
so
was over.
therefore, we can't do a whole bunch of other things to make up for it?
Generally, we could freeze budget items if we thought we were gonna go in a deficit.
Mhm.
But we'll have to look at that later in this fiscal year, but the
Because that's
addition,
the same complaint
additional
you have
revenue-
with Sheriff when the budget gets defeated,
But
and
that's,
then they come up with a new budget, and then they spend more.
we have a warrant item in our budget too, and the
Mhm.
warrant item says that any bills that are over and above what we budgeted for, we will pay all the bills at the end of the year, no matter what.
Oh,
Which
so
means
that's
we
our
go-
way out.
That's our way out, and that's where we're going to.
Well, if we have to.
yeah, we
That's how you
can't stop,
make it
we
legal.
can't stop operations because the budget didn't get approved.
Mhm.
So when the budget gets rejected, they're basically just creating a deficit.
Right.
Because we have to spend the money.
So
We
much.
have a choice.
Like that's what I don't think people understand. They think if they reject the budget, that we're actually gonna spend less.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
we're gonna spend the same amount whether it's in the budget or not,
But
because we're
but we
contractually
should.
obligated.
But we should.
We can't not pay our debts to banks,
But we
right?
should though, you know?
Should look.
We
Not
should
spend.
adhere to what they voted on.
But that's
We
why we
We
have a
can't,
fund
yeah,
balance.
we can't. How, so we're not gonna pay
I know, here we
US
go.
Bank up $200,000 that we owe for the land trust bond?
They slap a.
We better increase the litigation line item if we're gonna start doing that.
So that boils down to,
Yeah,
that boils down
that's
to
what she
how
wants to
much
know.
is
So
a
we would have-
contractual and how much is a possibility, like supplies and this and that. You say, can't spend anymore.
Well,
You know what I mean?
we would have to cut everybody's
I know,
supplies to
I
nothing
know.
in
And
order
you
to
still
cover
wouldn't come up.
200,000 in debt services alone,
Right.
right? Let
We
alone
have
contractual.
to lay people off.
Or you lay people off.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
So what would happen is we would run a deficit and it would come out of fund balance. So it would unwillingly reduce our fund balance is really what would happen.
And bigger towns like East Providence run a deficit all the time.
Yeah.
They simply run a deficit, they still have to pay
That's-
the bills, there's no way they cannot pay them. So there are towns further north that just run deficits. They run in the black, in the red.
Yeah, that's bad news, because
very
what happens is that gets a cyclical effect.
Yeah.
So then your bond ratings go down, then you're paying more,
More interest.
yeah, and then you're borrowing more because,
You don't have to.
yeah, you don't have the money, it becomes ugly quick.
Oh, real
Is
quick.
there anything that we can do as a town to encourage people to come out and vote against the charitable budget?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, really a
No, oh,
concentrated
yes.
effort.
Done it before.
I
Didn't we,
think we
Barbara?
need to do
Didn't we,
that.
Barbara?
No,
Barbara helped.
I
And
can't
we
say
defeated
that the
it. So
council
yes, there are
president and I
methods
have
of doing
discussed
Yes,
prices.
we
Same methods.
You
A
can
little
do it.
different because things are quicker now.
I don't share my political, I don't believe we show my political cost.
That's right.
Very-
You're holding it close to the
All right,
vest.
how far are we so we can?
Anyway, I want to go back to legal. So Brian, that 175 going to 192.5?
No, 192 for solicitor and then 90 for litigation.
So it's 282 total on that line, and that
And,
column.
and the only transfer to the
That's gonna be a
restricted legal
warrant
thing
item.
is gonna be actually just,
Warrant.
is what you don't spend.
Exactly, on a couple line items specifically that I know we're gonna
But
underrun.
that's only about 40.
Right,
That's all.
yeah,
Is
it's
that
not
enough?
gonna get us too far, but it's something, and we don't have to increase the budget
Yeah.
by funding that restricted account. But it's probably not gonna go too far, like I said, we used 72,000 out of that this year, so to put 40 back in, it's something, but it's probably not, it doesn't go too far when you start looking at,
Yeah.
legal fees.
Okay, so what's next?
Johnson?
Right?
What's up?
Scott?
How are you?
He's
I
here,
asked
he's
about
here
you.
to cut the budget.
I asked about you to Sylvia, and she was,
She was like, not now.
there you are, right in the flesh.
Yeah, I'm gonna just stare at you.
Brian, you all done with the page 5, the legal?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so,
6, page 6. Is the
general government,
revenue part, right?
yeah,
Yes.
general government revenue.
So I had some questions. The first line, 3109, delinquent taxes collected, you really are projecting that there's going to be a 50,
It's pretty big.
550.
It looks like, I mean, it depends
an
on,
increase.
yeah. you're
And
gonna
then the
go-
impact fee, line
Yep, so,
3403, what is that?
so that's a fee we take in building and zoning when there's new construction, and it accumulates in a restricted account, and every few years, we have to spend that money towards,
You do?
Chairman. Yes.
or else we have to return it to.
Every
the
time a
residents.
house gets built, because it affects the school.
Yeah, it comes to school bill.
It's written in the ordinance that if it's not spent after 5 years, it's gotta be returned to the.
Why wouldn't you spend it every year? Whatever
Because it doesn't add up.
accumulates.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably 4 years worth of accumulation,
I
so,
hadn't been saving it
So
for
we-
a rainy day.
yeah, that's the
I
thing.
think we got one.
Yeah, exactly, because last year we talked about using it, and
And you discouraged it,
I-
which was a
yeah.
good idea.
I was like, yeah, next year we're gonna probably need it,
Okay,
so.
all right. And then,
And by the way, when the impact fees, I was gonna send a note to you, Bill, and that was to look at this, because we've never
Yeah,
looked at it.
Yeah.
And it's been, what, 14 years or more since it
yes,
got done?
it's,
And maybe
it's,
it's time to increase the fees if we're allowed under the law. It's complicated.
we have to change the ordinance, and it's in the works. We're
Oh, you're
working-
already looking at it?
We were already looking at it.
Who's gonna write it up?
Well, who's gonna physically write it up, I don't know, but
Ask
I'm
Bill.
doing the financial research on it.
Oh, good,
And
good.
working with building and zoning, but there's
All right.
been a lot of distractions.
Right, right.
It's been a goal, but it's not something that's really been on the front burner because,
And with
Their
the
office
with
is
the changes
short-staffed.
in residential housing and they're going up everywhere, all over town, we really need it.
right, yeah, and we kind of, without getting into too much detail, we kind of hit a little bit of a roadblock because the way it was written in the ordinance was based off a document that it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It was based off the Charahoe CIP 5-year document, like a specific document that I met with Charahoe, with Sue Rogers, to try to find this document, but it doesn't exist anymore. So it definitely just needs to be, the whole thing needs to be rewritten, which is a little bit of an undertaking.
Talk about non-transparency.
They're taking cues from Washington DC maybe, this Sheriff School District.
and then the motor vehicle excise tax reimbursement, that's where the government's giving a little more.
Right, to
Okay.
offset the
Yeah.
decrease in
Yeah.
motor vehicle revenue, yep.
And
How many years into that are we?
This was gonna be the last year, and I think he wants to move it 5 years forward. It's
I think we
continuing
got
for 5 years.
It was 7 years, I thought, wasn't Anyways,
It's like a moving target.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, and the whole thing is kind of,
It
it
could
changes.
disappear on July 1.
No,
I mean, the amount of money they give us.
yeah, and
They could
they,
change their mind because of their deficit, so.
yeah, and they wanted to move 5 years forward.
There'd be
Yeah.
a citizens towns to get it.
Yeah.
And then the last two are the rents at lines 3315 and 3350. Where are we getting these rents from?
That's
The tower rentals, or the fair
Thank you
house?
very much, I was involved in those.
the post office, which is
tower.
where Jim's office
Yep.
is.
So the post office isn't there?
Yes.
The building right next
And
door.
what happened with that was that there was a $100,000 loan to fix it up, way back when the town, like in the 80s when they bought the building. And in order to even utilize it, we borrowed $100,000 and we paid off the loan by renting downstairs to the post office. And that their rent covered the loan payback. So once the loan got paid back, which was a few years ago, now that's part of your project. So that's where that number comes from.
And
And
the
the
tower,
tower, we
It's a
put
cell
up
phone.
a tower and
Cell
we
tower,
allowed
I think
others
you're
to use it and they pay us rent.
Yeah, all communication companies are right.
okay, that's
When
all.
I was a kid, that was a Talbot house, many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have a credit that came from that house.
And CIP is tab 2, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, as far as the CIP, we can look at the high level summary, but I think the way we've done in the past is just going into specific items when the department heads are here. So there's only 3 items this year. There's,
Computers.
the computers it's not a lot of money, I think, relatively speaking to our budget, but there's, the town needs to stay on top of it, because we've gone so long without updating technology that, you know, I don't, there's more work that needs to be done that he can handle on his own. So we budget what we think he can manage to do in the current year, but there is a lot as far as security and upgrading, and there's a lot to be done. And, you know, I think our current IT director does a great job. When he takes a project, he does it right, and he gets it done, and I just have a lot of confidence in him, so I think we should really encourage to get as much done. Well,
You had me at a low.
right, you know what I mean? I think we gotta get him to, I'm constantly trying to get him to do projects, because I know they're gonna be done right, and he does a good job of them, so that's enough about that. But anyways, it's a combination of several upgrades. And then there's the lease payments for the police vehicles and the lease payments for the truck. So right now, there's currently 2 police vehicles, SUVs in the CIP budget. And one large plow dump truck.
Yeah, I'm not totally convinced we need 2 police. There's more cars than people over there.
We usually do when.
To be determined.
When I was on the police committee, no, that was never on the police commission, I was on the finance board, we used to have a general philosophy replacing 2 police cars. That was years ago.
Yeah, grids are doing all that. Yeah, no, it's not.
I was never.
Yeah, warrant items is for the, that's that, to replace the.
Yeah.
Salt and sand. And then the overtime that's collected these about 40.
So every agenda will have that.
It's always.
In case
Oh.
we don't.
Oh, okay, all right, so are we done? Good.
So let me just ask those.
Yes.
Brian, Bill, do you have anything else?
8:30.
We just went through the CFP high level. Anything else? Okay, I think we're good. Till next time.
Okay.
Brian, can I ask one question?
Sure.
On the computer stuff, is anyone being forced to go to Microsoft 10
I think
because of other software? Like my
Yes.
QuickBooks is trying, but I will tell you that I talked to a guy that does software installations in Westbury, and he said, you don't have to go, unless it's financial, if you've got financial stuff.
Yeah, and the IT director can speak to that a little bit better than I can.
Okay.
I know that was something that was funded last year to upgrade some computers, because if they're on, I think it's Windows 7, or like the older versions,
Yeah,
they weren't compatible with the software, and there was security risks, because Microsoft wasn't supporting them.
yeah,
So I think, and then there's firewall issues, so again, that's out of my, you know, IT.
I just was wondering.
But Chris, when he's here, he'll talk to that a little bit more.
Okay. Oh, it is, okay.
So, Brian, if you could, I don't know, I know you're busy, just do like a summary
Sure.
of what we've reduced, if we increased anything, you know.
Yeah, so I'll do what I usually do.
Yeah.
I'll have the changes.
What we're gonna try to do is have them make the changes in the morning, send it over to my office, and hopefully we'll be able to get out the Friday informational packet for next Thursday's meeting.
All right, thanks, Lisa.
Okay, thank you.